A lot. A lot of sports fans have pushed it out throughout social media, throughout YouTube, that Mike McCarthy is the Doc Rivers of the NFL, or they'll say that Doc Rivers is the Mike McCarthy of the NBA. And me, after thinking about it, it's true. The parallels between the two are there. Let me break it down. Fasten your seatbelts for the realest Eagles and Sixers YouTuber! One who plays no clickbait and gets to the point! The myth, the legend, Nicky Steves! Come to my channel, you know the deal. Yo, boy, always keeps things real. I'm simply statue, think they slate, dropping unrealistic mad 2K takes for the clip. Even though cats like that get views closer to the milli, never hear me preach, look on to Philly. Before you watch the Eagles all the way through the early 22, authentic talk, forget what others do. Come to my channel, you know the deal. Yo, boy, always keeps things real. The 24/7, 365 way. Sports content for the reals that feels like day. It's been pushed around for a while, and I first started to hear about it in 2021. I was watching a urinating tree video where he was talking about the Sixers' failure against the Hawks. And here in that video, he broke down the Sixers' process from the 2020 offseason to the loss to the Hawks in that 7-game series involving Ben Simmons historically passing an open dunk in Game 7 loss and the 2 blown leads in Games 4 and 5. That if they would have just won one of those 2 games, they would have won the series in 7. But with that being said, though, he referred to, what did you expect hiring the NBA equivalent to Mike McCarthy? Was the first I heard about. And I've thought about it. I've kind of hinted at it in videos, but I never really talked about it. So I'm going to break down where the parallels are between the two. First, going to briefly note through each coach's respective failures in the playoffs. Let's go with that. So we'll start with Mike McCarthy, who was recently axed by the Dallas Cowboys, which is where brought this subject to light again. So McCarthy in his time since taking over as the Green Bay Packers coach in the 06-07 season has compiled between the Packers and Cowboys a 169, 104, and 2 record as head coach. He's been a coach every season minus the 2019 season before he got hired by the Cowboys in 2020. But let's kind of do a brief overview. Year 1, the Packers went 8-8 after a 4-12 season. Off an easy schedule, but still an improvement from where they were. All right. Year 2, they go 12-4. Then they lost to the Giants in the NFC Championship game, but so far looks good so far. Then they go 6-10 in 2008 with Rodgers year 1. Part because it was Rodgers' first year, part because of the Packers' defense. But they bounce back. In 2009, they go 11-5, losing the shootout to the Cardinals, where both teams scored over 40 in the wild card in OT. Then they come back, go 10-6, get the 6th seed in 2010. Win 3 straight on the road. It wins Super Bowl 45 versus the Steelers. Rodgers is the MVP. So far, it looks solid. But then from there, this is where we start to see the history of Mike McCarthy underachieving. Following year, 15-1. The regular season best. Favorites to make it back to the Super Bowl. 1-done, lost to the Giants. Following year, 2012. Win the division. Beat the Vikings in the wild card. Then lost to the Niners in the division on the road. Following year, win the division 8-7-1. Rodgers was out for a portion of the season, but okay, you could give him some benefit of the doubt. But they lost to the Niners in the opening round. 2014, this was the most brutal. They went 12-4. They were dominating the Seattle Seahawks in the NFC Championship game, got 4 turnovers, and they ended up losing on a touchdown in overtime from Wilson to Curse. Brutal. And that was a game, they was decimating the Seahawks in Seattle. They was making Russell Wilson look like a pee-wee quarterback. They was making him look like a scrub. And that team was well on the way to winning that game and playing the New England Patriots in Super Bowl 49. But they let the Seahawks come back and gave up a touchdown in overtime. Then they lost in overtime the next year to the Cardinals. They made it back, won the division in 2016, won in the opening round. Who did they beat in the opening round in 2016 again? Who was it? It was it now? One the Detroit Lions. They didn't beat them. Who did they beat? Oh, yeah, but they won in 2016 the opening round. Then they went on the road, beat the home field advantage Dallas Cowboys. All right. And then they lost in the NFC Championship game to the Falcons in a game that I thought going into it the Packers might pull off the upset on the road. But they got decimated by the Falcons. Let the Falcons go on to cause that epic comeback in Super Bowl 51. But then they come back the next year. They go 7-9 with Rodgers missing a portion of the season due to injuries. The next year, 2018, 6-10. McCarthy fired in early December after a loss to the Cardinals, who only won 3 games that season behind Josh Rosen, mind you. Then they come back the following year, go 13-3, make it to the NFC Championship game. Without Mike McCarthy, with Matt LaFleur as the head coach. All it took was a change of head coach. Packers were back in contention, making the NFC Championship game. While McCarthy was out as a coach in 2019, came back, first year with the Cowboys, went 6-10. Granted, they did have an injury to Dak, but even before that injury, the Cowboys were kind of Then they ended up going 12-5, winning the NFC East in 2021, but lost to the 49ers, who squeaked in as a wild card in a close game where Mike McCarthy's scheme, do a quarterback draw up the middle late in the game, needing a touchdown with no timeouts. And it ultimately cost them an opportunity at the end zone. Then the following year, they lost to the Niners in the divisional round. Yeah, they beat Tampa Bay in the wild card, but Tampa Bay was lucky to even be there. They won a crappy division, and Brady was on his last legs, figuratively, as a player. But then they lost to the Niners, who were contenders. Last year, they went 12-5. 2023, they went 12-5. Lost to the Packers, the 7th seed, making that 2023 Packers the first and to date only 7th seed to win in the wild card round. And they looked awful in that game. A team that looked like a potential Super Bowl contender late in the season. Embarrassed by the 7th seed in the opening round. And then, with less talent around, the Cowboys only won 7 games. Finished 7-10. Got decimated by my team, the Philadelphia Eagles, twice. With a backup, but still decimated. Blew the opportunity at playing, hurting the Commanders' momentum into the playoffs. And you saw it. They realized, oh snap, we got to move on from McCarthy. And a fun fact about McCarthy, out of all those Packers losses from that 2011 to 2016 stretch under McCarthy, where they're still in contention to at least get back to another Super Bowl, 4 of those losses came either on a field goal or in overtime. 2014 was the most embarrassing to me out of that, because they had the Seahawks number through most of that game. And they let them come back and win. They let them come back and take care of it, with an opportunity to at least make it back to the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 49, but they blew it. 2011 to 2016, when that championship window was still open, they didn't get back to the Super Bowl at all. So they underachieved there. The Cowboys underachieved in those 3 seasons where they made the playoffs back-to-back years, 2 of those 3 being division titles and home playoff games. Both the home playoff games were losses, mind you. They beat Tom Brady on his last legs, leading the Buccaneers in 22, and then got beat by the 49ers. And not to mention, they lost to the 49ers 4 straight seasons under McCarthy. 2021 in the playoffs, 2022 in the playoffs, 2023 during the regular season, 2024 during the regular season when the Niners were banged up. So McCarthy underachieved for the Cowboys, who in some of those seasons they made the playoffs, looked like contenders on paper, but couldn't win anything in the playoffs. Now I understand that can part fall on the quarterback, but it part falls on McCarthy. Now moving on to the other achiever he's been compared to, NBA coach Doc Rivers. Let's do a brief run through here. Through his play history. First season in Orlando, lost 3-1 in the opening round to the Bucks, 2001's first playoff appearance. Okay, first time. 0-2, lost to the Charlotte Hornets 3-1 right before they moved to New Orleans to a Baron Davis, Wesley Davis, Jamal Mashburn, Stacey Augman led Charlotte Hornets. Then they blew a 3-1 lead against the Pistons in 03. Then 04 he got axed early in the season. 05, first season as the Celtics coach, they lost in 7 games to a on the downswing Indiana Pacers. Then they missed the playoffs 2 straight seasons in Boston until they formed the super team in the summer of 07 with KG, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce, and they won that 08 finals. So Doc Rivers got his ring. But then let's take a look at what's happened since then. They lost in 09 to the Orlando Magic in the conference semifinals, a series they were favorites and were up 3-2, mind you. Then they lost the 2010 finals to the Lakers in 7, lost in the conference semifinals to the Heat in 2011. 2012 they lost in the conference finals to the Heat, when really they were kind of a fluke team in terms of getting to the conference finals, because they won their opening round series, then they beat the Sixers in 7 in the second round. A Sixers team who won against the Chicago Bulls without Derrick Rose in the opening round. So there was kind of an asterisk to the Sixers playing the Celtics. And even then, the Celtics struggled to put that series away, and then they lost to the Heat. 2013, they got bounced in the opening round by the Knicks, led by Carmelo, a washed-up Amari, and a washed-up Jason Kidd. Then he got axed there. Then he went in 2014, first season with the Clippers. They lost to the OKC Thunder. 2015, with Lob City team with DeAndre Jordan, Blake, CP3, they blew a 3-1 lead to the Rockets in the second round. Again. Then they lost to the Blazers in 2016. 2017, lost in 7 to the Jazz in the opening round. And that series marked 5 straight playoff series blown leads by the Clippers going back to 2013. 4 of those 5 were with Doc Rivers as the head coach. Then 2017, 2018, they needed to do financial retooling, so they had to trade away their players. They had to trade away Blake Griffin. They let CP3 walk in free agency because they couldn't afford to keep him. So they were retooling. But then 2018, 2019, they snuck in as the number 7 seed. The 8th seed, They lost to the Warriors in the opening round, but took it to 7 games, which for a team with no real stars was a respectable effort. Then 2019 all season, they got their 2 stars, Kawhi, Paul George. Now you're talking about potential You're talking about the potential to be a contender in the West. Go up 3-1 on the Denver Nuggets in the second round. This could finally be their chance to go to the conference finals for the first time in Clippers franchise, and they blow that lead in the bubble. Nuggets play the Lakers in the conference finals instead. Rivers gets axed. Then the Sixers decide he's the answer. Him and Daryl Morey were the answer that was going to finally complete the process. Well, let's see. First season, they go in as the number 1 seed. Potential contenders to at least make the conference finals, if not the finals. You were thinking at the time, remember, that maybe it would be the Sixers and Nets or the Sixers and Bucks in the conference finals. That was the expectation. The Nets and Bucks played each other second round. Bucks won the series in 7. Remember that KD big foot on the 3-point line, which turned a game-winning 3 into a game-tying 2 in Game 7. But, hey, the Bucks beat the Nets. Okay, so the Sixers, what did they do to get to the conference finals against the Bucks? Oh, wait. They lost in 7 to the Hawks in the second round. 2 of those losses in Games 4 and 5, which were blown leads. They were blown leads. If you would have won just one of those 2 games, Sixers win in 7. If you hold on to win both those, Sixers would have won the series in 5. And they wouldn't have been down 3-2, winning Game 6 to force a Game 7. And then Game 7, the Ben Simmons infamous passing up the open dunk, which that's another subject for another time. But the point is, you blew 2 big games in that one. They lost to the Heat in 22. 23 blew a 3-2 lead against Boston and got blown out in Game 7. Think about that. Look at all those blown leads right there with Doc Rivers. Going back to his first stint with Orlando, his final full season there. 3-1 lead blown. 3-2 as the defending champs favored against the Orlando Magic in the conference semifinals in 2009. And then 2015 blew a 3-1 lead. And blew a lead against the Blazers 2016, 2017 against the Jazz. Blew 3-1 against the Nuggets in 2020. Blew 3-2 lead in 23. And then they lost in 2024 in the opening round with injuries. But you see when I go through both Mike McCarthy and Doc Rivers' careers, in their own ways, they underachieved. The Packers from 2009 to 2016 was their championship window. One Super Bowl appearance, one victory. They didn't even make a second Super Bowl appearance during that run. A lot of close losses in the playoffs. The common denominator was Mike McCarthy. Now, you can also talk about Aaron Rodgers, too, and say he was part of it, and to some degree he was. However, Mike McCarthy plays a role as well. And then you look at the common denominator following Mike McCarthy to Dallas. 3 times they were considered contenders going into the playoffs. And what happens? All 3 times bounced out in disappointing fashion. You can put that on Mike McCarthy. Doc Rivers. How many 3-1 blown leads did he have? The Boston Celtics. Super team. They could have at least, they should probably on paper should have at least made 2 finals. The Sixers on paper should have at least gotten to a conference finals during that stretch, if not in NBA finals, at least during that stretch, and they didn't even do that. Particularly that first year, they should have at least made the conference finals versus the Bucks. Granted, the Bucks would have beaten them, and it would have still been Bucks and Suns in that finals anyway, but they should have at least made it to the conference finals. 2023 up 3-2. They probably should have closed that series and at least made it to the conference finals versus the Heat, but they didn't. Orlando Magic probably at least should have made it to the second round, maybe a conference finals during Doc Rivers' run there with T-Mac. But didn't happen. The Clippers during that era probably should have at least made a conference finals. 2015, they should have at least put away the Rockets in the second round. Now, granted, they weren't beating the Warriors. Warriors would have beaten them in the conference finals anyway, but they should have at least gotten to the conference finals in 2015 to play the Warriors, at least. Probably should have gotten past the opening round in 2017. I mean, there's this big history of underachieving for both sides. Like I said, McCarthy probably should have beat the Giants in 2011 and played the 49ers in the conference championship to make it to Super Bowl 46. Should have beaten the Seahawks to make it to Super Bowl 49. Probably should have beaten the Arizona Cardinals one or both times, 2009 and 2015. So the parallels are there. Both coaches have a championship ring during their career, but also have underachieved with the opportunities they had. So that's the parallel between Glenn Doc Rivers as an NBA coach and Mike McCarthy as an NFL coach. If you guys want to comment, let me know what you think. Feel free to do so. If you caught some of this video or all of it, I appreciate you guys checking it out and watching the video. Make sure to drop a like, subscribe if you haven't for more NBA and NFL related content. And until next time, it's your boy Nicky Stees signing off. Peace.